gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 321. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Also, our producer, Guy, is here.
Hey.
Hi.
And I don't mean like at the end of the show. He's going to be on the regular show.
It's going to be
because
exciting.
if you read the episode title, your next thought was probably, oh, please don't tell me that they made Saturn play that. He's going to yell about it. We didn't. The guy's here to talk about the topic with us.
I still played it anyway.
I would like to say the guy is here to yell about it, but okay.
I do like that we frame you as the guy that comes on the show and yells at people about things, and I've never heard you yell ever.
No.
You frame it as the guy who comes on the show and yells at you specifically about things that are only half your fault.
Yeah, Guy never yells at me. He's a very friendly person.
Okay, I see how it is. Perceptions, right? So yeah, Guy's gonna be on this episode. I know, Guy, you were, you're on every few episodes because you're the show's producer.
Right.
But you also did the whole NFL Blitz episode with Andrew. This one's gonna be a little bit different. We're just gonna do it business as usual, but Guy's also here, which is not that weird for us because for people that don't listen to the uncut show on Patreon, Guy, you're here every recording session, and we record with you every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like Mike Richards. I'm a producer and on the show.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's not that weird.
You're like Mike Richards was.
Right. Yeah, now he's not a producer or on the show.
Right.
It's great.
So my week, I've mostly been working and streaming. It takes up an inordinate amount of time being employed and streaming.
What?
It's, as it turns, I don't know. I know. I was like, you want me to work most days? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, okay, that's weird. That's not how I do things.
See, I thought you only worked like 2 days a week.
No. Well, really, I'm working like, I'm still kind of finding my groove. I am part-time and I am freelance, and I meet my quota for the month like really fast.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of trying to figure out like what all I want. It's one of those jobs where it's like, it is what you put into it, it's what you're going to get out of it. And I don't know what all I want to put into it yet, so I'm still
That's fair.
finding my place there. But I didn't spend like a whole entire weekend playing Circle Empires. Which is a little strategy game by a studio whose name I don't know. But,
Good start.
but it's just a little strategy game I picked up on GOG a while back. It's on GOG. It's on Steam. It's PC only. And I heard it recommended on some other podcast I listened to, and they're like, yeah, it's just a really good, super small, like if you want to play a strategy game, but you're like, oh, I only want to play a game for like 30 minutes though. And I picked that up, or I've had it. I picked it back up in that I was playing it again and have been working through and unlocking all of the different, there's like 25 factions in the game. And I got frustrated because the DLC for the game was on sale for like 70 cents. And I was like, all right, yes.
Nice.
And I bought it, and it included some new factions and new stuff, and that's cool. And then I was talking to Andrew about it just casually, and he was like, that sounds fun, I'll pick it up. And he got it under the assumption that we could play together. And I looked and I was like, oh, no, we can't. There's no multiplayer. And so then he was bummed out. And he was like, well, it was like $2 and it looks fun anyway. So whatever. And then I go, oh, no, wait, there's a multiplayer expansion. And so we go to buy that. It's not on GOG. The multiplayer expansion is not on GOG at all.
Where is it?
It's on the Steam version of the game.
Oh, of course.
So they released it on GOG and then just released the one bit of DLC and then just quit updating it. Quit supporting it on GOG at all. So the Steam version has multiple DLCs and the multiplayer expansion, and I'm like all upset. I'd never seen that.
Yeah. Well,
where something would exist.
Steam.
Yeah. Where something would exist on GOG and Steam and still have, or not be current on all platforms.
Oh, I have seen that.
Have you? I have not. I've seen where sometimes like updates will come like a week or two different, like the timing will be a little weird, but not just like them being like, yeah, we've abandoned that platform.
Yeah, I have a handful of games on GOG that haven't gotten updates in years, but the Steam version is still getting updates.
Weird.
Yeah.
It's possible that it has happened. I just haven't noticed it because it's never been as blatant as most of the game's content not coming out.
I thought you were going to say that like multiplayer was an EGS exclusive.
Right.
Yeah, just
what I expected
just the multiplayer. It goes through GameSpy Network, which EGS has resurrected and brought into their it's got to be on Epic Game Store.
Good old GameSpy.
But that's really it. I spent like a day and a half playing that. It's funny because like I said, I'm like, well, I just want to play a quick strategy game, and then of course I play 6 games of it in a row.
Naturally, yeah.
And at that point, I could have just played like a whole game of Civ or something. Yeah. But I don't. You don't think so?
I don't know about a whole game.
maybe a half a game. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I've really been up to. Other than the first thing Saturn's going to mention on his list. So.
Do you guys remember Heat.net?
No.
Oh, it was a multiplayer game service, a lot like GameSpy. I don't remember what game it was that I used to play that every time you turned it on, it was like, and you can play online with Heat.net. And I was like, that's the stupidest name ever. But that was in the late 90s. It was a brief thing. I was briefly looking to see if I could figure out what game it is, and it looks like it might have been Quake or Quake 2. Anyway, we went to the Final Fantasy VII Remake concert. Our producer, Guy, was nice enough to invite us all to the Final Fantasy VII Remake concert tour when they came in through North Texas.
Yes.
And it was excellent. It was incredibly well performed. I feel so bad for the harpist.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. The opening song.
Oh my god. It
messed it up.
During Prelude, which is possibly the most iconic song from the Final Fantasy series, certainly up there, which starts out famously with a long harp solo. And the poor harpist flubbed a couple of bars in it. Mostly was fine, but there were just a couple in a row that got flubbed.
That's what it was, is that they were back to back.
Yeah.
And you were like, it was so, because I mean, they're so professional we're at the Bass Halls, the Fort Worth Orchestra and everything. Yeah. And that it was like, I assumed I heard it wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, obviously I'm wrong.
Right. And then
I was like, Saturn, did the harp fuck that thing up? And you're like, oh yeah, bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it seemed like the fuck up was in the key change, or I guess the chord change. There are 2 arpeggio or bars of arpeggio that are in a different or start on a different chord or whatnot, and I think that's where it got messed up. Like the regular, the main chord that you think of and you hear, that was perfect every time.
Oh yeah. And then I listened for it once the rest of the orchestra came in, because eventually there is additional melody added in on all the games after Final Fantasy IV. And once they did pick up that additional melody, I was still listening for the harp, because the harp keeps playing throughout the entire song. And it was perfect from that point forward, because it repeats that same point over and over and over again. It was perfect, spot on the whole rest of the time. So part of me is just thinking it was like super nerves, because it has to be. Being the person who starts the entire concert with a solo has got to be just nerve-wracking.
Well, right before that, it's not like that was the first time it really wasn't the opening songs. They played the national anthem first.
That's true. They played the national anthem. They had a little bit of
warm up, you know.
That was kind of weird.
That was weird. What part does the harp play in the national anthem, though?
You know, the
Rocket's red glare.
Yeah, that's all harp, dude.
Just exclusively harps.
Harp.
That was weird. It
was weird because normally when you go to an event, if they're going to play the national anthem, they'll be like, "All right, we're going to play the national anthem." You know, they'll say like, "Please rise," the national anthem. They just started playing it, and we were like, "Oh, are we?" It was very confusing.
Yeah, it was very weird. But the rest of the concert was great. Just excellently done all around. My favorite part, though, especially near the end, once I had realized it, was I could see down to the conductor's podium, and he had a little LCD display
iPad
on there.
Yeah.
And it was showing what was on the big projector screen, as well as the rhythm. It was showing like when the beats start and stop.
It's like a rhythm game.
Basically, it was so that he could conduct in the same beat with it, so that they would match up with the video.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure he was off by a measure or 2 on a couple of songs, which is fine. It just meant that the video ended slightly earlier or later than it was supposed to. But it was still really neat to like look down there and see what beat he was supposed to have. And as somebody who was
criticize him mentally.
I was criticizing him mentally because as somebody who was in band for years, the whole point of the conductor is to help the band or orchestra find which beat in the measure they are in. And his hands were kind of loosey-goosey all over, and I was trying to figure out where beat 3 and 4 was sometimes. Fortunately, the orchestra did not have that problem. They had gotten used to his orchestration style, and they were excellent. So
yeah, I just started assuming like half the Final Fantasy music was in like 7, 8, or 9 or some shit. It was weird.
Seriously.
I know so little about music that for years I thought conductors were just like the biggest con artists on earth. Because I don't get what they're doing. They just look like they're up there freaking out for a while. I have no idea.
Yeah, it was weird, but it was I was very happy with how they performed it. Everything seemed very good. So thank you again, Guy.
Thank you for the tickets for taking us. It was very fun. It's funny. I haven't played Remake, so some of the music I knew because it was based off of older tunes.
Most of it.
And then other parts of it, like I'd recognize a part of a song, and then the rest of the song I'd be like, I don't really super recognize that. But again, I have what doctors call dumb ears, so even if it is pretty close, I might not even notice it. Yeah. But I bought the original Final Fantasy VII soundtrack on CD while we were there, and on the drive home, I listened to that. And that was giving me like the nostalgia tingles, like the concert was great and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't that like that for me anyway. Yeah. It wasn't that like nostalgia thing because and I think it actually, in my opinion, hurts the performance a bit because they open with video from the original game.
That's true, yeah.
And it really does put you in that like kind of nostalgia mode. Right. And I'm watching that and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm kind of feeling it. And then the rest of the thing is like, nope, just straight FF7 remake. None of that old stuff.
What it was advertised as.
Right, which is true. Yeah. It's very true. But I feel like for me, it got me kind of geared up for that nostalgia. And then I was like, oh, well, it's not that. Right. It's great, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Right. One thing I noticed is whenever they were playing newer songs, the ones that were exclusively for the remake and not just remixes of existing songs. Yeah. A lot of the new songs, which are great music and they work in the context of the game and it's great, but as I was listening to them, I was like, I don't remember this at all. I don't. This is a completely unmemorable track. This just feels like generic Hollywood background sound. It does not feel gamey. And I do feel like there's something different in a lot of newer games, not just Final Fantasy VII Remake, but also Final Fantasy 15. A lot of more recent games go for that more cinematic style soundtrack, which is great in context.
Right.
But out of context, it's kind of dry.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is... Go ahead, Guy.
I was going to say, some of the arrangements were kind of weird, because like the Turks theme or the Shinra theme, one of the two, sounded nothing like it actually does in the game or like it does in my head. That's because they were playing some of those like... I guess drum lines or beats or whatever, like on a timpani instead of on like wood blocks.
Right. Yeah. And there was a couple of tracks like the battle medley that they played. I noticed that what in the game, both the original and the remake, is like the background, the bass line essentially. They were playing that on the trumpet, and it was much louder than the instruments that were playing what should be the melody in the original, which is fine. It still sounded great, but it is just like, that's slightly different than I am used to. That's not where this melody goes in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also spoilers, right? Like for Justice.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. I don't remember any of that. That shit was weird.
It was weird. It's weird in the game. Let me tell you.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The orchestration, the orchestration of the Honeybee Inn original song was ridiculous and dumb, and I loved it.
That one I couldn't pay attention to at all because there was an individual next to us.
Oh yeah,
who was clapping along with the music. And let me tell you, people who've not been to see like an actual orchestra, you don't do that. You don't dance. You don't shout things. Right. You don't clap along with the music.
Yeah.
In the beginning, first he was sobbing. And I was
because they were playing Eris's theme.
Yes, and I was like, well, you you can't help feeling that, if something really like gets you and it makes you cry, you can't really help that.
Sure.
He was really sobbing, but I was like, okay, whatever, it has touched him. That's a valid emotional response, and you can't just like turn that off.
Makes sense.
But dancing and clapping along with the music when you're literally the only person doing it.
And the entire auditorium.
Buddy, you gotta stop.
Oh, man. That guy was...
I mean, the jarring part was that he was trying... It seemed like he was trying to guess where the orchestration was going to end. And so he would have like a loud single clap, probably 10 to 20 seconds before the song ended.
Right. Yeah. It was really weird and awkward.
It was
every song. And then he would clap at the beginning of every song one time too.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
But fortunately, after intermission, he stopped.
He stopped because everyone around him turned around and was like, you need to quit it. And he was aggressively excited about it. And they were like, we are trying to listen to this performance.
Right.
You are extremely disruptive. People laid into him.
Oh, man.
Like, nobody was like, like hateful but they were like, you have to quit it. You have to.
I appreciate getting that excited, but there is a time and a place. And you have to know the context of the environment you're in.
Yes.
But no, it was fun. I did have a good time.
But the Honeybee Inn song, he was trying to like encourage other people to like
it was weird.
Do it with him.
Yeah, I wasn't as close to him as you were, but like I kept seeing him out of my peripherals. Like it looked like he was doing some sort of bop dance. I don't know what was going on.
My problem was the clapping. The random single clap was, one, it was very loud and it was right in my ear, and we were up in the balcony, so you could hear the orchestra fine, but it wasn't like very loud. So I'm trying to listen closely to this music, and then his clap would scare the shit out of me because it would be jarring and way louder than the orchestra and right behind my ear.
Right.
And so that was problematic.
Okay, we weren't way up. We were on the box tier. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying, like, we weren't like sitting like in the pit, like right in front of the orchestra. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just don't want everybody to think that I cheaped out and bought you like the cheap.
Yeah, guy had us up in these fucking nosebleeds. I was behind a pillar, and he was down front. When I sat down, I said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "You got what you deserve," and left. I don't know.
Then he threw a drink at you. They don't even let drinks in there.
I mean,
he brought it from home.
To be fair, this all started because like Pablo texted me one day and he was like, "Hey, you have any more of them Final Fantasy tickets?" And I was like, "Oh shit, okay, let me look," because I had looked a couple weeks before and there was nothing available.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they opened up new seats or they finalized the schedule or whatever they did. They opened up a bunch of seats.
Nice.
And so I found these seats and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go. My girlfriend's going to go. We'll bring Pablo. I was like, man, everybody's going to be real sad that Pablo went to this thing. I guess I should invite everybody else too. Let's see if we can find seats together, you know.
There you go.
You definitely didn't need to, but it is greatly appreciated. I will say that.
You're very welcome.
But no, aside from that, because of the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters and because of that concert, I was just in a Final Fantasy mood. So I tried to restart the FF4 After Years on Steam.
Ooh, yeah. How's that going?
Well, I managed to push through it on Wii back in the day. And it was
the fact that you describe it as pushing through it.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder why you're even bothering.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's, playing it on the Wii, it was clear that it was a port from feature phones. It was very obviously originally a game designed for a tiny cell phone with no power to it. But then they moved it to the Wii and they upgraded some things. And so it was interesting and it was neat to follow up on the story from FF4. The Steam version, however, is built off of the DS Final Fantasy IV.
Oh.
So it is rebuilt from scratch using the 3D engine.
Yeah.
But still uses the plot and everything and the new game mechanics from the original After Years. And it's different because it reuses all the maps from FF4 DS.
Yeah.
But there were new maps made and the maps were changed on the After Years. And they didn't change anything that I can tell so far. So they just had to rearrange things to kind of make it work. And so it kind of feels shoehorned. I don't know that I'll finish it, but I commend them for having tried. Let's So good for them. And I'm also giving Final Fantasy 12 another shot. After many attempts to get into the game, I have gotten further than I have in the past, and I am starting to gain an appreciation for the Gambit system and everything. I finally realized that if I had actually read the tooltips, I would have learned that I cannot, in fact, change jobs later. And
that's yes.
And I may have made some mistakes.
I think with the Zodiac Age version, I think eventually you can.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
Sure.
Basically, from what I understand, and I'm really just going off memory, I think Zodiac Age adds the second job.
Right.
I don't know if that's in the original game.
I believe it is not. Yeah.
So I think that I believe there is more flexibility, as much as I can say definitively. Right. So I would wait at least until you unlock the second jobs and then see what things look like, because I don't know that that's definitively the case in the remaster.
Either way, I am starting to enjoy it. I still have no idea what any of these words they keep using are, because it's one of those games like Final Fantasy 13 that just throws a bunch of terminology at you. And
Final Fantasy 12, out of all of the Ivalice games, it's the one that assumes you're really invested in the world of Ivalice.
Exactly.
And you're like, I'm not. And it's like, okay, well, you should have been. You're like, okay.
So I'm learning all the names and figuring it out, but I'm still a little taking my time on that part. But the gameplay itself, I'm getting into. It's neat.
Guy, what have you been doing with your week?
A bunch of random shit, to be honest. I downloaded Myst.
Great. Let's do some news. And we'll just. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I am not a fan of Myst, so I am curious how you feel about it.
Yeah, me too.
It was good. As far as Myst,
you finished it,
right? Yeah, like I sat down and finished it in a day. So, like I haven't played Myst probably in like a decade. No. So like I had to actually figure out the puzzles and shit. But it took 7 or 8 hours.
Did you like the 7 or 8 hours? Holy cow! Did you like the original game?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I never beat the original game or Riven or Myst 3 without like a step-by-step guide.
Wasn't the third one Uru?
Was it? I don't know.
Or was that the online one? I don't remember.
I believe it's pronounced with a long Y sound as well.
What?
You're a long Y.
Oh yeah,
that's
mice.
How it's I used to play a game that was a lot like Myst, but it was like Greek mythology themed. And for a long time I thought it was Myst, and it was not Myst.
It's Myst.
But you, oh God,
perfect.
So you've been playing it on Xbox. Is the remaster at least? Is it a good remaster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a remaster that was originally designed for VR, right? So like, you have real movement. It's not like click transition kind of thing,
right?
Oh yeah, because it was like static scenes in the original, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And like the original, like I guess FMVs or whatever that they had in there of like the actors and the characters,
right,
are replaced with like CG renders. I assume because they couldn't upscale the video because it was pretty shit video back in the 90s,
Yeah. You don't say.
Yeah.
It was recorded on a camcorder.
But I mean, if you're a fan of Myst or you've always wanted to check it out, it's definitely worth a download on Game Pass for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've been playing MTG Arena because why not? I don't. It's my time waster game.
Yeah.
Like it's a game I'll sit here and play while you guys are talking and I'm listening to you record a show.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. It's because I can listen to it and listen to you, or I can play it and listen to you guys. Like it's
so I know, and I'm excited because you're on the show, so I can ask these questions. I have heard that they're introducing the modern format to Arena. Is that a thing, or is it like a modified version of modern? Because obviously the modern card pool is massive. Are they like, they can't just be adding all those cards?
I don't think they're adding all those cards. I think what they're doing, they have like a historic mode, which is,
I'm aware of that, which is just like all the rotated stuff, right?
Yeah, it's all the current stuff and the rotated stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know what
Basically everything
modern would be necessarily. I guess modern is probably encompasses more, but I guess MTG Arena has been out for 2 years now.
Yeah.
So there are.
It came out right after Amonkhet, didn't it?
I think that's right.
Because everyone was like, are they going to add Amonkhet or not? Because it's right after it, and they were like, we're not. And I think maybe they did later. I don't know.
But yeah, so there's a good, I don't know, 12, 15 blocks worth of cards.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, it's fun. I don't know, whatever. It's fucking Magic. Best of one most of the time. They do have a best of 3 mode.
I've always maintained that Magic is a game that if you're playing best of 1, you're not really experiencing, like the game has such high variance that it was really built for best of 3. It was built for that. And best of 1 is just like a crapshoot so often. You're like, I lost through no fault of my own. Like, that's why it was best of 3,
Right, yeah. There's so much variance from just card draw in general.
Right. But I get that it's also a phone game and they need to have, a best of 3 takes 45 minutes to get a match in,
Dude, it didn't come to mobile till like this year.
I know. It's
only a couple months ago.
Ridiculous.
But yeah, other than that, I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 because today's game is... not as good
in that lineage.
You're right.
Is that still in early access or is it released now?
Oh yeah,
it's still. I think they're expecting full release. They're aiming for 2022, which probably means 2023.
Dang.
Yeah, Larian doesn't fuck around. They use early access like the way you're supposed to, where they're like, no, this is a game still in serious heavy development. We need your help. Not like, oh, it's basically dumb, but we don't want to release it. So here's the, like most people do. Yeah. Or Larian's like, here's some of the game. Like they really do utilize early access.
Right? Yeah, I hadn't played it probably in a good 8 months. I think I played, maybe longer because it came out about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I played for maybe a month or so, and it's hard to play back then. But at this point, they have cinematics. They've added druids as a class, and just a bunch of other stuff. They've got a lot of quality of life changes. Whenever you're doing any kind of ability check, you've always seen the die roll, but it puts it up there. It lets you know what the difficulty test is, or what's it called?
The DC.
DC,
it's a difficulty check that you're rolling against.
Yeah, and then it automatically, if you have somebody in your party with like guidance, for example, it says, hey, do you want to add that?
Yeah.
So you can click to activate the ability.
I've always been a fan of the games kind of revealing more of the underlying D&D game system rather than kind of obfuscating it, which we'll talk more about momentarily.
Yay! And then my last little things are little things, and they're mainly for Saturn. Wow. As I played about 20 minutes of Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Nice.
I had turned it on and was like, oh yeah, I'm in this temple grinding ground. Did some grinding for 20 minutes and I was like, that's enough of that.
This is my life now.
I'll come back in a month, I guess. And then started trying to get back into Octopath again. Because it's on Game Pass.
Someday,
I fell out of that one as well.
Someday I feel like I'm going to finish Octopath. I don't know when that day will happen.
For me, I loved the combat, but the story was it just felt so tedious.
Yeah, that's my issue as well.
Yeah. I feel like I like the combat, except that you have to pay attention to the combat constantly.
Yeah, true. It's not mindless. And I think that was a complaint Saturn had when it launched, he wanted something a little more mindless.
Right.
Yeah. I feel that same way. Like, I might finish Octopath eventually. I might finish Cold Steel eventually.
Right.
I might finish, Nier eventually.
Wait, which Nier?
Automata?
You should really finish that one.
I know. I hear that. I
twice.
should finish it multiple times.
Yeah, you want to get the good ending.
I need to go back and get the real stuff. I don't think I've gotten the real things yet.
It's so worth it.
Let's do some news.
Okay.
First up, Super Nintendo turned 30, and we're all closer to death.
And
welcome to.
And Paul Rudd didn't age at all.
I was buying beer today, and they go, "Will you answer the question on the screen, please?" And I look down, and it says, "Were you born after September 3rd, 2000?" And I was like, "Why does it want to know if I'm 10?" and then I was like, oh fuck, oh my god. I had a breakdown in the line, and the lady's like, just on the screen. I'm like, I know, I'm just not ready for it.
Yeah, my nephew turns 21 this December.
No.
Yeah, it's a hard realization.
Your nephew is almost as old as we've been waiting on the Phantom game console, which I'm holding out hope.
Almost someday.
My girlfriend's coworker just graduated from high school, so she just turned like 18.
Yeah.
So she was born after like 9/11, and it's just what?
Yeah.
People were born after 9/11,
Right.
They kept making people?
right?
Who knew?
4 new physical games released for the Atari Lynx. So all you Lynx owners out there, which I feel like we have an odd number of in our Discord server, an inordinate amount of Lynx users. You got new games.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I was looking through them, and I've already forgotten what they are. Most of it's all just indie titles and stuff. But it was neat to see them all get physical releases. So good. For them.
Magic the Gathering has announced a Street Fighter crossover event, as well as a Fortnite crossover event and a Warhammer 40K crossover event.
How
and a Lord
excited
of the
are
Rings
you,
one,
Justin?
And a Dungeons and Dragons one. Literally 0%. I don't.
The Dungeons and Dragons set is out now. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
that one is out now. It's the Street Fighter ones. I believe it's one of their. They do these limited items that are called secret layers. I believe Street Fighter is a secret layer. Which is basically when they take some existing cards and they do them up with crossover art. Mm-hmm. And so, which I'm kind of more okay with them rather than them just taking a whole set and going, it's this instead of the Magic the Gathering mythos.
Right.
Because for people that aren't a million years old, for people that aren't older than the Super Nintendo like me, Magic used to be the whole thing of card games that had this big mythos, this storyline, and they released books and stuff. And like, it was, that was what was so fun is that it was like this big mythos across these different planes of existence. And mixing in other mythoses is like I mean, I like Lord of the Rings and I like D&D and I like Warhammer 40K, but I'd also want more Magic story.
I'm just basking in how old man you sound right now.
Right? Yeah,
I know.
I was appreciating that the youngest person here is having this existential crisis for how old he is.
I was bitching about it in the Discord, and I was like, you know what? I'm glad people are enjoying the game. I like that they're enjoying the game. This is not how I think I want to enjoy the game, and I know how old it makes me sound.
It's funny just because like you were talking about how you felt old when you were carded for beer, and I was just thinking like, I feel like I haven't felt that level of old in a number of years. It's been a little while now. It's since I last
they stopped carding you.
Right, that's true. That is very true.
Do you need to see my ID? No. Well, but
no,
it
thanks,
says if
Grandpa.
you look like you're under 50, then well, I know what it says. Move along.
Get out of here, Grandpa.
Do you have
Someone modded a Game Boy Advance SP to have wireless charging, which is there word on if this is going to be like a product we can buy, or is it just I
don't know. I think it was just kind of
proof of concept.
Yeah, proof of concept. It does make it pretty thick. It is a big old SP at this point.
Yeah. Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX announced for Switch, PC, and iOS. I am so very excited for this.
Justin, where are we supposed to put the CDs in our Switch?
They have a system for that in place where you
just
can't
connects
do the CD,
to your Spotify,
but you can look up the song and then it will generate a monster. I don't know. I don't remember the details of it, but this has been out in Japan for a while. So there is a system in place for generating monsters based off of music.
Nice.
And no, it is not going to let you plug in your USB CD-ROM drive into your Switch, which although I feel like that's, that would be authentic.
Yeah. I remember I had a friend who was so into Monster Rancher when I worked at EB.
Fun.
And he went to every CD warehouse in the entire Dallas area just to find this one Whitney Houston single. Or maybe it was a Mariah Carey single. I think it was Mariah Carey. And it was because it was supposed to generate some like super overpowered monster. And he finally got it, and he was like, you want me to make you a copy of the single? I was like, no, I absolutely do not. I do not need that at all.
That's all right. For the longest time, I thought Monster Rancher and Monster Hunter were the same thing.
Yeah, they're not.
No, they're totally... In one of them, you run a ranch of monsters, and in the other one, you hunt monsters.
That is a good point, yes.
So you didn't eat them with ranch dressing?
No.
In its own way, yes. RMC Retro has announced a consoleized version of the Mister. What does that even mean?
So it's basically just a pre-constructed
with a nice case and all the boards you need and everything.
Right, but he's actually modified it so that it is more easily modular, so that you can like snap in controller ports, and it has the RAM and all the stuff that you would normally need to buy with it are already on this board that he has had prefabbed. And it fits in a nice little console, and it just looks like kind of looks like an off-brand N64 shaped console. And it looks neat. I'm still not certain that I am the target market for the Mister just yet. And the price range I don't remember the exact price range he quoted. It was still an estimate, but it was a little bit higher than what I am willing to spend on that.
I think just the Mister boards, and the add-ons you probably would want is in like the $350 to $400 range.
I don't think it was quite that for his pre-constructed thing.
It must have gone down. Well, granted, these prices I'm quoting are from when I looked at it like a year and a half ago. Right. Like it's been a while.
Yeah, it was weird, but it looked neat. I could definitely see there being a market for it, and I hope that he finds his audience.
Yeah. NES and SNES designer Lance Barr has left Nintendo.
It's sad.
It makes me... Who we talked about recently. Right. Because weren't there more sketches that were released?
He released some more sketches. I'm wondering if he released those because his retirement was coming up.
I kind of wonder.
And he was just kind of prepping for that celebration.
Kind of wonder the same thing.
Yeah.
Fan-made 2D Metroid Prime D-Make has been issued with a DMCA takedown.
Oh, no.
Download it while you can, kids.
Who would have
spoiler,
thought?
you already can't. It's already gone.
So, yeah, they did say on their website that they absolutely expected that to happen, and they were just, fucking around trying to see what they could create before that showed up. Still a little sad. I would have liked to have seen what Prime could have been like in 2D so that maybe I could finish it someday. But I guess not.
Yeah. New physical GBA game Good Boy Galaxy announced via Kickstarter, which I'm kind of shocked there haven't been more newer physical GBA games because GBA is so heavily bootlegged.
That's true.
That GBA compatible chips and cartridge shells are widely available.
That's fair, yeah.
So it's kind of weird to me it hasn't been done sooner, but cool.
Yeah.
And finally, Bravely Default 2 and Collection of Saga Final Fantasy Legend. Is that really the name?
That is actually the name of it, yeah.
Collection of Saga, Final Fantasy Legend.
Correct.
Are both coming to Steam.
Yes.
Which is, that's great.
Yeah, coming over from the Switch to Steam. It makes me wonder if does Square Enix see a market on Steam that they didn't previously, or are they not getting the market on Switch they expected? That is,
I don't know. I wonder. I wonder as well. It could also just be a thing where they're like, hey, it's been out on Switch exclusive for a little while.
Right.
Now let's move it along and get what sales we can.
Yeah, for the Saga collection, I'm not super surprised just because it's a collection of old Game Boy games. I'm sure it could run on anything. But
also, it's named like a Rambo movie.
It is. But for Bravely Default 2, I'm a little surprised just because every game in that series thus far has been Nintendo exclusive. So to see any of them release elsewhere, it's a little surprising.
Bravely Default 2, I'm excited about because I played the demo on Switch and it ran so noticeably bad that I was like, I want to play it, but I can't fucking handle this.
I didn't notice it running bad when I was playing it on Switch, but
it ran bad for me.
I'm also not very observant for poor frame rates and shit.
I was like, this has to be sub 20 FPS frame rate at some points. And it's not even so much the low frame rates. If a low frame rate is consistent, that's fine, but it was jumping back and forth. It's just really distracting to me, and I was like, yeah. Although, for all I know, the final version fixed those issues. Obviously, I just played the demo version, so maybe it wasn't optimized. Let's get into the topic at hand. This week, we were talking Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah, the AOL game, right?
Yeah, the first ever graphical MMORPG published exclusively via AOL in 1991. We went back in time and we got us some AOL discs.
That's good.
And we played it. I actually have this game downloaded.
Oh, the AOL one?
Yeah, it doesn't do much anymore.
It probably doesn't do anything anymore.
Not really. No, we're talking 2002 Neverwinter Nights, which is BioWare's second foray into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, following the two Baldur's Gate games.
Wouldn't that make it their third foray?
It depends on if you consider Baldur's Gate as a franchise, one foray or two, I suppose.
Well, they don't. I believe BioWare didn't do Baldur's Gate 2. It wasn't an Obsidian.
They might not have. Yeah, you may be right.
I believe Obsidian did Baldur's Gate 2.
I believe you're right.
Obsidian also did, I believe, most of the work on Neverwinter Nights 2.
It says that BioWare did Baldur's Gate 2.
Okay, well, then we're going to call it.
Maybe it was Icewind Dale that...
Oh, yeah, Icewind Dale was for sure Obsidian.
Yeah.
And I think, was Obsidian Planescape? Planescape Torment? I feel like that was Obsidian. No, I'm not sure. Anyway. The I get what we were going for in the notes was that the Baldur's Gate games are very much one big story, you know. Yeah. So, second engine, but third game, I guess. Obviously, this was developed by BioWare, published by Atari, of all people. Was remastered not that long ago by Beamdog, published physically by Skybound Entertainment. The original game came out on PC in June 2002, Linux in June of 2003, and Mac in August of 2003, thus proving that Linux is more important than Mac OS because it got it sooner.
At least to Atari, they were putting a bunch of stuff out on Linux at that time.
Yeah. And then the remaster hit early access on PC in March of 2018, early access mobile, December 2018, and came out on Switch, PS4, and Xbox One, December 2019, so not that long ago.
It's true.
As far as first encounters, I bought the Diamond Edition like a million billion years ago. I owned Pools of Radiance Myth of Draenor, which is the like, not the gold box Pool of Radiance, but the newer Pool of Radiance. And I was like, I like this D&D game. Maybe I'll like that D&D game. And I played it, and I was like, I am so bored. And I turned it off. And then finally, I was sitting around a few weeks ago and got a wild hair because I was sick. I had like a cold or something.
Yeah.
And so I was that level of sick where you're like, I don't want to do anything, but I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
So I just started playing Neverwinter Nights and really kind of clicked with it. Yeah. And then I imposed it upon my D&D group.
Yeah.
So,
I remember you messaged me and said you were feeling sick, and it was the morning after we had recorded some episodes.
Yeah.
And for some reason, my first thought was, oh no, he was sick. What if I got sick while we were recording? Oh wait, we record 40 miles apart.
Yeah, that's how you got a virus through the internet.
Yeah.
Now you're sick.
Why didn't my antivirus
catch computer
it?
gets viruses,
right?
Anyway.
No, I actually pre-ordered the game back in 2002. I had not really played any RPGs on PC, I guess, at that point. No, I'd played some Daggerfall already at that point. I'd played some Daggerfall. I had played... Does Diablo count? No?
As what specifically?
As kind of a computer RPG.
It is an RPG, and it is on computer, but
Perfect.
The same way that all RPGs from Japan are not JRPGs.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Not all Western RPGs, computer RPGs, are CRPGs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's a square rectangle type situation.
Yeah, I hear you.
The community would say no. I'll let you have it.
Yeah, that was pretty much as close to role playing on a PC I'd gotten, aside from the PC ports of Final Fantasy 7 and 8, which I had already played at that point.
Right.
So my more PC centric friends kept telling me, no, if you really want to play an RPG on PC, if you want to get into it, if you want to find out what it's about, these BioWare guys, they're the ones that this Baldur's Gate, this is it. And then this was announced, and I was like, well, it's Atari. I like Atari. Atari makes things that maybe I'd like. I like the logo. They have a good logo, is what I'm saying.
They made the 2600.
Yeah.
They made
the
those
riveting success of Palm 2000.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right? There was that remake of Combat. Anyway, so I was like, I'll give it a shot. It looks like the magazines are hyping it up a bit. It sounds like it's going to be a big thing, and there's a big old collector's edition coming. So yeah, I'm in. I'll give it a shot. And I was told it'd be just like the PC equivalent of Final Fantasy, that I would love it. And so I got it home, and I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on or why they kept talking to me. I didn't know what I was doing. I died a lot.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, and this isn't me criticizing.
That's fair.
It's just me asking out of curiosity. But did you read the manual?
I started to, and then
It's quite long.
Yeah, like I started reading it, and then my eyes rolled back in my head.
Yes.
And then I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I didn't resume, is what I'm saying.
The part of the manual that tells you, oh, if you don't know how to play Dungeons and Dragons, this is the part you need to read because we assume you know what Dungeons and Dragons is and how to play it, is in like the back of the manual.
Yeah.
It's the last part.
Yeah, I never got to that part.
All right, I'm with you.
So it was a confusing experience, and then I more or less put it down for 15 years or so.
Is that all?
Give or take. Well, it wasn't quite that long, but I did try it again once or twice over the course of almost 20 years. And each time I was like, I still don't get this. This still doesn't make any sense to me.
I had many false starts with the game.
Yeah. And then you said we were going to record an episode on it, and I was like, well, I guess I can't find my disc, so I might as well buy it again. And then, because it was on sale. And then as soon as I bought it,
was like
again,
$5.
I went to go look at my big-ass collector's edition box just to try to remember what all was in there. And among the things in there was the fucking disc. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Crazy how that happens.
Yeah, I started playing it because Justin said, hey, I don't want to DM right now. We're playing it for D&D.
Nice.
Get in line or get out of my group.
That's exactly.
That does sound like how you
as aggressively as I phrased that. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
I mean, I'd heard of Neverwinter Nights before, but I just kind of thought it was the game where you have to fly it through rings and collect coins or something.
Yeah, when I mentioned it, I think it was even on After Hours. You're like, is that the one where you're a clown and you got to fly through rings? And I was like,
you
no,
mean Nights into Dreams?
Nights into Dreams.
Now I want to try Neverwinter Nights into Dreams. I want to know what game that is.
Well, you got to make sure you bring a rogue with you, though.
Right.
There you go. Don't forget the rogue. Saturn, before you completely check out of the remainder of this discussion, tell us a little bit about the development of Neverwinter Nights.
I'm just imagining
your
Nights
job,
like
development bot.
like Nights just flying around, going through loop-de-loops, and somebody's casting magic missile at him.
Yeah. And then someone stops to talk for 15 solid minutes about how they had this farm, but they can't find their wife. And you're like, great, I'll go find them. And they're like, but hold on, let me tell you about my life at the farm.
Yeah.
Because this was such a good farm. You're like, I don't care. I'm going to go find your wife. I said, yeah, but hold on.
Let me tell you about the year the dwarves fell.
Because I love my wife so much. If he was telling me about the year the dwarves fell, I'd listen. That sounds interesting. He just wants to tell me about his crops and his wife.
Oh,
anyway.
really?
Are they yelling magic missile and throwing beanbags at you, though, while you're flying?
Right.
Maybe.
LARP style.
Yeah. It just makes me think of that old Dead Alewives recording.
Yes.
I love that. That was so good. Anyway.
Are there any girls there?
That's a Mountain Dew. Anyway, no, they. So I tried desperately to find actual pre-release interviews or development information about this, and like every interview that I found was one post-release, two with a marketing person and not with anyone on the dev team.
Yeah.
And they were constantly just like, "Oh, let me tell you how amazing the world they crafted was," and I was like, "I don't care. I want to know how it anyway." So from what I found, their motivation behind the game was to try to create a digital way to emulate a tabletop D&D session as accurately as possible without bogging down the player with minutia. So they felt that in their previous games and in Baldur's Gate, they gamified it more. Which, now that I have said that out loud, doesn't make sense because it was already a game.
Yes,
but they
video gamified it.
Yeah, they video gamified it to make it a little.
And we'll talk more about exactly what that looked like in a little bit.
Yeah. So this time they wanted it to be a little more accurate. And I did find an interview from 2000, so from years before the game released, with CGW. The team of BioWare said they worked closely with Wizards of the Coast to ensure that the game adhered as closely as possible to the then new D&D 3rd edition rules. I don't know how close it is because I don't understand what any of that meant. But I assume that you know far more than I do as far as how successful they might have been.
I do know about Dungeons and Dragons. We will discuss that.
Yeah.
I do find it important to note that what you said about them really wanting this to be as much of an emulation of a tabletop D&D session as they could make it, and that being the driving force behind their design, because that is a distinctly different design philosophy than Baldur's Gate had before it.
Right, and also most other gamified D&D games that I have seen,
True,
to be honest.
Very true. And we'll talk more details about that in a bit. But
also, just from that interview showing that in 2000 they had already been working with them for a while, reminds me how long this game was in development hell.
Yeah.
Before it finally released in
Which
02.
is shocking that when it did come out, it only had the one damn module.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Let's talk presentation and UI. This uses BioWare's Aurora engine, which was their follow-up to the Infinity engine, which just at the macro level, it is still top-down like the Infinity engine. It does have a free camera, so you can move the camera however you want, zoom in and out, whatever you want. It does have real-time lighting and shadows. So the lighting and shadows look pretty good for, 2002 PC game.
Right.
And the Aurora engine was also the engine used to develop The Witcher, just the first one, not the other Witchers.
Well, after the first one, they would have been Witcherer.
Yeah, and then the newest one, Witcher 3 Witchiest.
Yeah,
was the
it's Witcherist, not Witchiest. Come on.
And then if they make a sequel to that one, it has to be Witcherister.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a sauce that you put on some meat?
I just keep thinking of the sandwich shop Witch.
Witch.
I'm thinking Witch, Assassins of Kings.
I mean, to be fair, when you said it had a free camera, I was like, you had to pay?
Yeah, no, you pay for camera.
And in Baldur's Gate, you had to pay extra for the camera. Yeah,
it's a gold every step.
I wrote in here that the game looks pretty good. I want to rescind that. Specifically, the lighting and shadows and effects are good for the time.
Yeah.
But the character models look like crap. They're like Final Fantasy VII Lego people.
Well,
and I don't love the art design because D&D 3rd Edition had a very distinct, very cohesive art design, because AD&D 2nd Edition, which is the edition before 3rd Edition, had
that does make sense numerically. Yes.
It was very diffuse. It had so many different campaign settings and modules. It was this giant just pile of spaghetti of just different stuff and art styles and gameplay styles, and it had like a war game module, and it had a module that let you go into space. It was crazy. And 3rd Edition really brought this artistic cohesiveness to D&D, in my opinion, and it's very iconic. And I don't know why they didn't use art and models that looked more like the official D&D 3rd Edition art.
I wonder if it was a licensing thing. If Hasbro just didn't make it available.
I don't know. And I don't even think it wasn't even Hasbro at that time. I don't think Hasbro bought. When did Hasbro buy Wizards?
I thought that was the late 90s.
Oh yeah, you might be right. It might be Hasbro.
And this was after Hasbro had sold their computer division to Atari. So maybe that's how Atari ended up publishing this.
Possibly, very possibly. Yeah. But I don't love the art design. Some of the characters look really dumb, like goblins and trolls in particular. Which, let me tell you fight a lot of goblins and trolls. Look real dopey to me. And I don't know if that's.
I keep everything so zoomed out that I can't really see the character models very well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just me being overly critical because I had to fight a million billion trolls in that one dumb dungeon, but they just look goofy to me. You know,
I like my acid dripping weapon.
You do have a weapon that drips acid. So again, the game has really cool effects for the time.
Yeah, except you kept setting it on fire.
I'm sorry that I was adding fire damage to your acid weapon to make you a more effective combatant.
Yeah, but you made me a less cool-looking combatant, which is more important.
A big change kind of UI-wise is in Neverwinter Nights, you control a single character at a time. You do not have the option to control multiple characters, which is a massive change from the gameplay flow and kind of design ethos of previous D&D games, which were always designed around you control a whole party, because a D&D game is 4 to 6 players in a party. And in this one, You don't. You get a single character, and that's it. You can have companions, and you can give them basic commands like guard me or stand there, stuff like that. But you don't control their equipment. You don't control their level ups. You control nothing with companion characters, which I when the game started, I liked that. I was like, this is so much easier. Like, presentation-wise, the game's like, you're just this dude. That's all you got to do. You don't got to worry about all these other people. A lot of D&D games, when you fire them up, the first thing they want you to do is make 6 characters. And if you're someone like Saturn who's like, "Why, I don't know D&D games,"
right?
Then how are you supposed to make 6 fucking characters that aren't just total trash?
Or you just make 6 characters that are total trash.
There you go.
I can assure you, I've done it a lot.
And as time kind of rolled on, as time kind of rolled on, I started to kind of resent not having any control over my other characters, because you have to take companions. You know, if you're playing single player, you'll go find an NPC companion. They run along with you. But I've reached a point in my single player game that my companion is completely useless. He dies instantaneously in battle. And
that's what they're supposed to do, right?
Do they get experience and level up, or no?
They scale, but they don't have like a level up or anything. They just presumably scale with you, because I'm level like 9 or 10 in my single player campaign, and if my dude was still level 1, he'd be getting killed even faster than he is right now.
What's faster than instantly?
Well, okay, he goes around and then he goes down.
Okay, it's that around, but it's cut out.
It's frustrating because you know, my NPC character is the rogue, and if you're playing single player and you are not a rogue, you need a rogue to unlock stuff, or you're not going to be able to unlock things. And let me tell you, this game locks everything. So I've kind of started to not enjoy the companion characters. They've started to become an annoyance to me the more hours I've put in on Neverwinter Nights. As much as it makes the initial game much simpler, in the long term, I just think it's a not well done system. If that makes some amount of sense.
It makes sense.
As far as presentation stuff, the whole game is controlled with this like pop-up right-click menu. Almost all interactions in the game are done with this little pop-up menu, where you right-click, and it's contextual. Depending on where or what you right-click on, you'll get different options as far as like your class and your spells and abilities. And that's how really you control 99% of the game. There is a hotbar at the bottom. All your windows are little pop-up windows, but almost everything is that same pop-up right-click window.
Yeah, my problem with the right-click window is 2 things, and from the context of I mostly played it multiplayer, right?
Right.
In that, so it's difficult to pause things because 3 other people were trying to do things.
Yeah,
and so you got to like navigate through this menu that has like sub menus to get to your abilities.
Yes.
In the middle of a fight. So if it's not hotbarred, you're not using it.
Yeah. And now adding things to hotbar is not as easy as like dragging it onto your hotbar.
No. You have to go right click several sub menus, right?
Yeah. Well, some things you can drag, but then removing from the hotbar, you don't just drag it off. You have to right click and hit remove from hotbar. It just is tedious, I think is your point, and I agree with that the right-click menu, while very useful and very universal, it gets tedious for sure. And it turns into a thing where you're constantly filtering through these right-click menus. And I think, and we didn't mention it, but presentation-wise, like Baldur's Gate, the game can be paused at any point in time. And then whenever unpaused, it's everything's happening in real time until you pause again. And in a multiplayer setting, it causes problems, but we'll talk more about.
Wait. So it still pauses even during multiplayer?
Yes. Anyone can pause the game, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. I do want to talk story, because the original game launched with one single campaign, The Wailing Death, and The Wailing Death is the most boring module I've played in Neverwinter Nights.
Is that not common for D&D games to just have one basic storyline when they launch?
Oh, I thought you meant to be boring.
Oh, well, that too, yeah.
For D&D games, it is common. But for this particular game, which was explicitly billed as, hey, we're going to have modules and expansion content, lots of different ways to play. Right. And look, it's one of those things where looking at it from 2021, which is where we are, in case you didn't know, is there are a ton of modules for the game, and there's still an active, ongoing community that still makes community modules. Right. There's people that are running effectively MMOs inside of Neverwinter Nights as we speak. And so it's treated much more like tabletop D&D, where with tabletop D&D, you buy the rule books. That just tells you how to play the game. But then you can go either make or buy any old module you want.
Right.
And you'll play that module either for a bit or to completion. And then you go, all right, well, this next module is the next one in this storyline, or we can just go to something totally different.
Yeah, see, when it came out, that's how I kind of remember it being advertised anyway, was there is a story you can play through, but the billing for this game is a tool set that your DM can use to create as many stories as they want so that you and your player group can continue to play virtually forever. And when I saw that, I was like, well, hopefully somebody I know figures that shit out. Because I sure as hell wasn't going to.
But and it's the Aurora tool set is extremely powerful, and I'm glad because I wasn't sure how it was billed, and for them to bill it that way is correct in the long run. But I think having your very first module being the Wailing Death, and this is why we're also not really going to talk much in the way of story, because I highly encourage you to, if you sit down and play a module in Neverwinter and go, I'm not loving this, do something else. Go play a different module, because they're not connected. Only a couple of them are connected. And the Wailing Death is just a tremendously boring module, but from a design perspective, as far as I know, it is the only module with a tutorial that shows you how to play the game.
Well, don't worry. You can just read the far back end of the instruction manual.
Right.
It will help guide you through to that tutorial.
You have Shadows of Untitled, Hordes of the Underdark, and Kingmaker that were all official campaign add-ons. Of course, there have been tons and tons and tons of community
and those
modules.
were all sold as expansion packs.
Correct. Those are the big expansion things. And in Shadows of Untitled and Hordes of the Underdark, I believe are connected storylines. Those two you want to play together. But the Wailing Death is just such a boring module. I don't know, 15 hours into it, more than that, maybe close to 20 hours into it, and it's just a slog. I don't love the design in it. The story is really slow and boring.
Is that the one where the dude wanted to tell you all about his wife and his house?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. But the other modules, we've been playing Shadows of Untitled, which is pretty fun. It's a pretty fun module.
Yeah.
You start right off the bat tracking down artifacts and delving into dungeons and having a good time. It feels very much more D&D-esque. Because with Neverwinter, I don't know. The Wailing Death is a lot of like, okay, go wander around these city districts and see if you can figure out what's going on. And the story is just not there to support a kind of meandering, slow burn story, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which was the big driving force of the Baldur's Gate games, was look at this great story. It's not really much like playing D&D.
Right.
In that instead of being a character at a table, you're playing all 6 characters. You have no access to the die rolls. You can't see any background information. And the rule system is kind of a heavily modified version of the tabletop game. At least the upside there was that the story was engaging. You know, they had much more interesting characters.
Right.
By virtue of kind of, not really having a single story thread and development being a little more diffuse, it kind of ends up being this situation where none of the stories are particularly compelling so far. They're not bad. They're just pretty basic, I guess. I don't know, Guy, how you feel about Untitled, which I think is the only one you've played.
It's okay. It's a story. No, I played a little bit of the Wailing Death too.
Yes. How did you find the Wailing Death? Because I'm curious how you stack up against how I felt about it.
It was kind of engaging because you're dealing with like the place you're at being under attack or whatnot.
True.
But then once you resolve that and it sends you out to the different districts, I never really figured out which district I was either meant to go to or wanted to go to, and I ended up in some fighting pit and immediately got like blasted in the face. So, you know, and then just never went back to it because I didn't know if I needed to track back through the town to the original spot and go a different direction or what.
Yeah.
But Untitled, it's gotten better. I think initially my sort of issue with it was that all the story was happening when other players were like, messing around, advancing the story. And I was like, what do you do to walk though?
Yeah.
So, but as we've gotten into it, it's gotten more engaging. We fought so many like, I don't know, gnolls and kobolds and just random shits happened, and it's been fun.
Yeah. And this kind of transitions us into gameplay, which is, I think, really the focus of Neverwinter Nights. I would say if you're coming to Neverwinter, expect a much more gameplay-focused type of game compared to something like Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale or one of the Infinity Engine games really in general, because it really feels like more of a D&D combat simulator than necessarily a recreation of the tabletop experience, which, depending on who you play D&D with and how you play, reenacting just the combat could be 99% of what you do in your D&D game. Some people do play that way.
Yeah, we get Diedrich in our game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that nobody listening to this knows this and has no idea what I'm talking about, but Justin's the DM in our like weekly game. And he voices this like warlock that is just like the most cowardly, submissive thing. And he's got this like great, like, I don't know, just nerdy, whiny voice. It's amazing.
Now we have to hear it.
His name's
I can't do it.
Oh,
I can't.
You can.
I can't. I'll do it some other time. I can't.
How dare you?
He just sounds like the nerdy kid from Robot Chicken, but like more of an asshole is basically it. I don't do a lot of voices. Some DMs, they're like big into doing voices and stuff. I don't do a lot of voices just because I can't really do accents. Like, I'm not good at it, you know, but really shitty, nerdy voices I can do real good.
Yeah, he's got like 3 voices, but he makes them work. It's great.
Nice. It all works out.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just general gameplay stuff. The game centers around the player or multiple players if you're playing multiplayer, experiencing the story through dialogue, and then venturing out into semi-open world areas, fighting monsters, completing quests, etc., etc. You can bring NPC hirelings along with you, but again, they are not full-fledged characters. It is based on D&D 3rd edition, and it does follow D&D 3rd edition pretty closely. It does change some things based on difficulty. For example, on the lower difficulties, monsters cannot get critical hits on you. And things like friendly spells won't harm you. So in tabletop D&D, the spell Fireball famously explodes anyone within its radius. But if you're playing on one of the normal or lower difficulties in Neverwinter Nights, it sets it so that you can fireball safely without killing your friends or without having to take special feats to remove them from its blast radius. So it makes some concessions with 3rd edition D&D. But I also feel like it keeps, and this may be by virtue of, Saturn, what you were saying, was they were still in the early days of D&D 3rd edition when they developed this game. They were working with Wizards of the Coast. As time rolled on 3rd edition, a lot of rules around the actual table, nobody played with. And you see this a lot with tabletop RPGs, where some of the more tedious rules or more confusing rules or just not fun rules just kind of get tossed out. And you see it across multiple groups. You can go to all kinds of different groups that play D&D, and they'll very often be ignoring the same rules because it's just kind of collectively understood that, like, yeah, that rule's in there, but it's real tedious and annoying to keep up with, so we're not going to bother with it. This being a video game, it does not do that. It sticks to every single rule as it is written in the rule book without discretion. And so they fix some things like your friendly fire spells, monsters getting critical hits, because at low levels, D&D 3rd edition is still tremendously lethal. You'll go down fast. And so that kind of fixes that. But you run into things, and Guy, I'm curious, because you've only ever played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right?
Yes.
I'm curious how you feel about some of the more confusing rules, because like a big one to me is flat-footedness, which is a rule in D&D 3rd edition, where if you are caught flat-footed, then you're at a disadvantage in combat. Or if you're engaged in combat with someone and you run somewhere else to another combatant, somewhere else on the battlefield, they get an attack of opportunity on you. But you can make a fighting retreat if you walk away from them.
These are things that I didn't know, and I have gotten attacks of opportunity constantly when we play.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. The game doesn't really spell it out, but what you need to do is shift-click to walk somewhere instead of just running away from the enemy, so you'll make like a fighting retreat. But the game doesn't super-duper spell like just kind of weird things like that out, and it ends up being, I feel, confusing to people that aren't pretty well-versed in 3rd edition D&D. You might be like, why am I getting attacks of opportunity? What is flat-footedness? What is going on here?
Well, and I think like the leveling system is a little more open, if I'm understanding correctly. Like I was playing a paladin, and it feels like in 5th edition, when you play any class, you get specific things at specific levels that help you round out your character, and it feels like it grows in a sort of specific path of or a power curve.
Prescribed.
Yeah. Whereas in 3rd edition, or at least in Neverwinter Nights, it seems like every time you level, you have a choice from an array of things every time that you can pick in any order to build your character. And there's no, I was gonna say there's no right or wrong way to do it, but there is clearly a wrong way to do it. But there's no like, I guess, guide rails,
Is that not normal for D&D? Because I just assumed that complete lack of guidance that left me completely stranded and confused was a normal thing.
For earlier editions of D&D, very much so. Like Guy was saying, 5th edition is a little more guided, and it's just that instead of 3rd edition is very much lots and lots of little choices. What skill do you want to level up? What feat do you want to take? What thing do you want here? 5th edition is very much big choices. In 5th edition, you'll just go, all right, I'm a paladin, and I'm going to decide to be a paladin of light. And it's a big decision you decide at once, and it determines how your character develops.
Right.
In 3rd edition, it's just every few levels, it's like, hey, do you want to take a feat? And you're like, well, what is that? And they're like, well, it's just like a special power that you can get. And you're like, okay, well, which one should I take? And it has a recommended button. And I always made a point of any time I leveled up, I would see what it recommended to me. Just to see how viable that seems. And it does seem to recommend mostly sane defaults that make sense. But at the same time...
That you say mostly, though.
So every now and then I'm like, why would you fucking give me that? You need to give me Fireball. That's the spell I would pick at this level. I have access to Fireball, and it's the best spell in the game. So why do I care about your other spells? But yeah, Guy, no, it as far as leveling up, it is pretty much exactly like actual tabletop 3rd edition, where every level you get skill points. Every few levels you pick feats. You choose to if you want to keep continuing on leveling up your same class or not. And then your class features are added automatically. But it can seem like a lot of decisions that you don't know what to do, especially the feats list, because feats are really what customize and differentiate your character from other people's characters. So like you might be a barbarian and you take power attack and great axe and weapon finesse, and you're like, man, I'm just really about that, making one big giant single hit with my axe and just slamming through a guy with it. And then I might roll a barbarian and take cleave and great cleave and specialize in being able to hit lots of different enemies very, very quickly with my cleaving abilities. And our two characters would play really different. And in 5th edition, theoretically, that would be something that you would pick like, okay, I'm making a character and I'm going to choose a cleave barbarian path. And it kind of not railroads, but guides you down that path in a way that creates that type of character. Whereas 3rd edition, you kind of have to know ahead of time, like, all right, what kind of build am I wanting to do here? and what's going to contribute to that build. And it can seem really confusing for sure.
Yeah,
for people that aren't well versed.
From what I've learned, or I guess what I've gleaned from you guys talking about, like 4th edition, for example.
Yeah,
where it was, heavily video gamed system, right?
Right.
It seems like 5th edition, it has kind of taken a compromise of those two things in a good way. Like I like the way that 5th edition works way better than 3rd, and I would assume 4th would be a little boring.
4th is like Lego blocks. So that's at a macro level. That's the best way I can explain it without just going into long discussions about editions of D&D, which I would love to do.
I thought that's what we were doing.
Back to Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah.
I really do feel like Saturn said, this is very much like we want to be 3rd edition D&D, the simulation, and I think it is that. And it also includes all of the warts that 3rd edition includes, the things that people would throw out, when sitting around the table. When you're sitting around a table with your friends going, hey, I don't want to do encumbrance. Encumbrance is a pain in the ass. Let's not do encumbrance. Like, just don't be assholes and carry like 700 sets of plate armor or something stupid. And that way we don't have to worry about exactly how many pounds you're carrying. And everyone goes, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll quit tracking that. And then the DM just polices it. Well, in Neverwinter, you don't have that. So the game is just like, no, you're going to play with encumbrance, whether you want to or not, and your only other option is to cheat. And I think a lot of that is just because when you're playing a game like Neverwinter, you do kind of see the boundaries of the tabletop system, and around a tabletop, you have a referee, you have a dungeon master that can kind of soften those edges and make them more agreeable and more enjoyable for the group. In a video game, you don't have that, and that's always been kind of the long-time problem of D&D games, is that you don't have that referee who kind of softens the edges that need softening and makes things a little more agreeable as a gameplay experience, really customizes it to you specifically, right? That's the beauty of tabletop role-playing games, is if me and Guy are playing a game, I'm going to make a game specifically for Guy that I think Guy will enjoy. And when he doesn't like a portion of it, I'll go, okay, axe that. I'm not doing that again. And so as the game evolves, and as the game evolves, the game becomes more and more specifically for him and something he enjoys. And D&D video games don't have that luxury, Let's talk about it as because we already kind of are, as a D&D tabletop type experience. I do think it's closer than most D&D games. It does have tons of modules, which something like Baldur's Gate doesn't have. If you're playing Baldur's Gate with a friend, then you're playing the Baldur's Gate story, period. There is no alternative module or whatever. Guy, as a I don't want to say recent, because you've been playing D&D with us for 2 years now?
Yeah.
More than that. But as a newer D&D player, how have you felt that this translates the tabletop D&D experience to a video game?
I will say the experience of running around, talking to characters, getting the story, gleaning the story from conversation, and then just kind of heading off in the direction that you want to go. Sure, great,
yeah,
absolutely. I think where it really differs for me is in the exploration. Because in a tabletop setting, you're like, I go to the place, and then
yeah. No, and that's a great point, because Baldur's Gate had an overworld, and that's how they mitigated this. Because normally when you're playing tabletop, you don't go, okay, walk 10 feet forward. You're outside of the town. Walk 10 more feet forward. You don't do that. You just go, I'm going to walk to the next town, and then the DM goes, okay, and you skip all that. Baldur's Gate let you have an overworld, and the zones were kind of smaller, and you could zone back and forth. This is very much like, no, you're fucking walking there. Get ready to hoof it.
Yeah, you buy a horse. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to explore. There's no map or direction or pointer or anything. So even in tabletop D&D, when you say I go to the place, if it's a 5-day journey, then you're doing, 5 days worth of random rolls, to sort of simulate that journey experience.
Right. Or sometimes you just go, all right, you're there. I don't want to fucking, whatever.
Right.
It's tedious. Let's get to the story. Let's skip that boring part of you going, okay, we make camp and I cook a stew. Like, sometimes you want to do that, but other times you're like, no, we're just at the place. We make it. We're there. Cool. Let's move on.
I mean, we did get an object that sent you towards, or give you an indicator of where the next object would be, or a close one. But we were constantly yelling at our friend to spam the button, right?
Yeah, we're like, where do we go? Yeah.
And even then it was like clipping like through the screen. It wasn't like following a path. It was just like, no, go north or northwest or whatever.
Yeah.
Which was tedious. And then and my other problem with it is that it doesn't simulate combat. It doesn't recreate the tabletop experience of combat, at least for me, in any way that is fun.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
Sure. In D&D, because the DM is sort of refereeing what's going on, and everybody has to take the time to say what they're going to do at any given time. Right. Your turn is a simulation of 6 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. And so if there are 30 creatures in a combat for whatever reason, then you are waiting through 30 turns that encompass 6 seconds. Mm-hmm. And in this game, those 6 seconds happen in real time. So there's no way to really, unless you have like very coordinated pauses and stuff, there's no way to sort of strategize and figure out, okay, this is what's coming. These are who like these guys are targeting. Here's what I need to do to help the party out. Or for me, it was a lot of me just running around. I'll hit the guy that's in front of me and hope that I can aggro the people around.
Now, I do think it provides a more authentic role-playing experience, because from the perspective of I'm playing this character in this dungeon, it would be more logical in the context of that story for your guy to go, I don't know, I'm going to hit who is in front of me because that's what I see and I'm frantic. Like, is it a more authentic role-playing experience? Yes. Is it less authentic to the tabletop experience by extension of that? Yes, I think that's also true. I do think that it being real-time speeds up a lot of things. Like if we did have a combat with 30 combatants, that would be so tedious. Having it all real-time is nice, but for smaller combats, it's almost... like you're saying, it feels kind of frantic, right? Where you're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do that. Okay, who paused? Did you pause? Okay, are you ready to unpause? All right, I'm gonna unpause. Oh shit, I forgot to queue up my spell. Can I pause again? And it's just this kind of like, it feels like you're playing tug of war with other people over the pause button.
Right, and like, okay, the combat's over. Why has everything been looted already?
Yeah. And like, oh, well, I started looting in the middle of combat. Well, don't do that. I also feel like there's a lot of loss of precision. Now, of the like 4 characters I've played in Neverwinter, 2 of them have been wizards. And in tabletop D&D, a lot of discussion is over targeting. Mm-hmm. How many people is my spell going to affect? Okay, what are they going to roll against that? Okay, cool. Is it going to affect my friends? Okay, I want to craft this spell specifically on the battlefield. I'm going to draw it out to show you that I want to affect only these people. And in Neverwinter Nights, there is no targeting reticule. Whenever you're casting a spell, a lot of modern games do this thing where if you're casting a spell, it gives you like, let's say you're casting Fireball, it'll give you a big circle, and you can kind of scoot that circle around so that it hits exactly who you want it to, right?
Yep.
Neverwinter doesn't have that. So you lose a lot of precision on your spells and stuff because you're like, I think I'm hitting other people, but I'm not totally sure, and I didn't really want to hit that guy, and in a lot of D&D discussion is like, especially if you like, we play a really tactical game. We have a tabletop, we have a grid, we have miniatures on the grid, and it's very tactical. It's very much like, all right, I'm going to move 3 squares this way and then do this thing 2 squares. It removes that ability, and it makes it much more natural and, again, true to the story and the thing being role played, but not true to the tabletop in experience.
Yeah, I think that's where I ultimately it lost the fun for me. Was that I enjoy that tactical experience a lot more. Like I love playing XCOM, for example.
Same.
Or was it Mario Rabbids game? That was fantastic.
Oh man, that was really great. Oh, that was so good. It was basically XCOM. Right. Have you seen, this is totally unrelated, I know you're a big Marvel guy. Have you seen Midnight Suns, which is a Firaxis XCOM Marvel game?
No.
It's effectively XCOM with Marvel characters. It looks really cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm on board with that.
It's the XCOM team. They're like, hell yeah, dude, we're doing Marvel. Yeah. And it's like mostly X-Men and Runaways and stuff like that. So right. I'm stoked on that. Yeah. And total tangent.
No, you're fine. And I assume that was an intentional design choice to craft their combat that way. Yeah. I think if I was going to play a D&D type game, it would be a more modern game, like one of the Larian games, for example.
Yes.
Because they do stick to that kind of turn order and let you strategize, in that sense. So
yeah. I get what they were going for with it. I do feel like I feel like this game has created a very rich lineage, and the Infinity Engine games before it. I appreciate what Neverwinter was trying to do and what it does do, and I do think it has some success, but at the end of the day, the storylines aren't great. The combat is a little frantic and all over the place. It just feels like, specifically when I play like Larian games like Divinity Original Sin 2, like it is very much like this lineage of games proceeded through to today. But it has evolved so much since Neverwinter. We've figured out so much about how people like playing these type of CRPGs that Neverwinter, I think it feels dated a lot of the time. It's interesting, but I think it gets to that point where I feel like, also difficulty-wise, can we talk about the fucking difficulty?
Yeah, you like dying, right?
In the Wailing Death game, you can respawn as much as you want. It puts you back at a temple, and you lose like 10% of your golden experience, and you can teleport back. And I was like, okay, well, that's how they handle the extreme lethality that D&D can often deliver. And sometimes in combat, you die, and you don't even really know why or what you did wrong, because while it does give you access to rolls and stuff, again, the combat is just kind of frantic. It's just kind of like this stuttery bouncing back and forth between everything freezing and you frantically trying to click on shit and hope things happen the way they're supposed to. And so it's a hard game. Even on easy difficulties, you die a lot. And I assumed all the modules had this respawn function. We started Shadows of Undrentide, and it's like, oh, you died. And we're like, okay, well, can we respawn? And it's like, no. And you're like, oh, well, fuck.
Time to cheat.
Yeah, and I will say this. We cheat prodigiously. I recommend cheating in this game. And I think cheating is a good kind of... It gets you around that not having a referee. When something unfair happens in a tabletop D&D game, you can pull your game master aside and go, hey, man, I feel like that really just kind of legit wasn't fair. We didn't make any wrong decisions and we got sandbagged. And then the DM can be like, okay, yeah, let's retcon that and fix it, right? It happens all the time. Totally common occurrence around the tabletop.
Well, and we were like, when we started playing multiplayer, we kind of said, okay, we're not going to like save scum. We're not going to like cheat unless
we're
it's
gonna
like
play through. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I think we've done 4 or 5 sessions now. And this last session, towards the end of it, we were just like kind of rushing it. And anytime we die, like we got in this fight that was way overpowered for us or whatever. And every time we die, we just rezzed and said, all right, we're in the same fight. Let's go.
And I'd say if you're trying to squeeze some fun out of Neverwinter Nights, definitely cheat. Please cheat, because this is not a fair game. And the thing about tabletop D&D, and it's a thing they get right, is that tabletop D&D is not fair. Difficulty is all over the fucking place. Ask anyone who's ever run a tabletop game and be like, hey, how fair was it? And they'll be like, oh, I had to cheat like constantly. I like fucking made up half the rolls by the end of the night. Like, it just happens. Every now and then you'll run into a module or a situation or an encounter that your party just isn't built for. And in Neverwinter, it's just like, I guess you're just going to get your shit kicked in. That sucks. And you're like, can I respawn? I'm like, no, that was only in that other module. And you're like, well, why would you only put respawn in one module? And they're like, we don't know. We don't know why. It's just it's very uneven.
I think I wasn't.
is how I
I don't think
describe
I was prepared for that at all because in Eastern style role playing games, you win. You always ultimately
You just
win.
Yeah. And if you put in enough time,
Right.
you'll just win.
You'll win. You always get what is essentially a good ending. Like sometimes you might have to work for it a little bit, but it's always there. And playing Neverwinter, both the original campaign that I played back in the day, and then also trying Untitled last week. I walked into a room and the character I was supposed to save just died.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, did I fail? Do I have to reload? No. If you reload, you start the whole thing over.
I also feel like so much of this game and so much of these modules are designed around... The game really wants you to play multiplayer. It wants you to not only play multiplayer, but you need to have a rogue and a healer. And if you're not playing in a party with a rogue and a healer, you're going to have a bad time. Because there are tons of traps and there are tons of locks, and playing single player, it sucks because you can only take one companion. So unless you are a healer or a rogue, and you bring a healer or a rogue, you're going to feel dramatically unequipped for most situations in the game. And I was playing the game on stream, and I was playing a gnome wizard. And someone in the chat goes, I was like, man, this is so hard. I'm having such a hard time. I'm having to cheat constantly. And someone goes, well, you're playing a gnome wizard. And I was like, well, you're right. But at the same time, it feels like frustrating design that the game would let me play a class combination that literally isn't viable. I mean, it's not like I picked some weird shit. Wizard is a pretty big class. Gnome is a pretty big race. I was playing a gnome. I wanted to be a gnome wizard. And I couldn't take any kind of melee combatant with me because I needed a rogue because everything's full of traps that kill me in one hit, even at high level. And so it's like, it's just really uneven. When it's fun, it's a lot of fun. When the encounters are cool, they're really cool. But when they're not, they're frustrating, difficult, uneven situations that you feel constantly unequipped for. There have been some battles that, man, it's just a blast. It's fun. You're flinging fireballs. You're having a good time. You're coordinating with your team, and you're doing good. And then other ones, it's like you just feel like whatever they wanted you to come to this situation with, you don't have it.
Yep, I agree with everything you just said.
Excellent. Let's talk reception and legacies. We're just like way over on time. This was a very well received, well regarded game at its time. The only standout lukewarm review at the time was Eurogamer, who said it was a little too combat heavy. Which I could definitely see, and I think I agree with. Legacy-wise, it was re-released by Atari many times. You had Neverwinter Nights Gold, Platinum, Diamond.
That was just kind of a thing that PC games did at the time, though. They just constantly re-released with the expansion packs bundled in.
You got the Beamdog release, which fixed the broken GameSpy online functions, which no longer worked in the old editions of the game. It includes community, graphical, and gameplay fixes. It is not a graphical upgrade. Please, if you get Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition, know that it is not. It looks like the original game.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better, but that's it.
In fact, it even defaulted to 800 by 600 resolution on my giant-ass 4K monitor.
It does also, there was some community uproar because it charged for some DLC that was released to the community for free years ago, and some people are a little salty about that. So make of that what you will. They did release Neverwinter Nights 2, which came out in 2006. It was by Obsidian and Atari. I believe BioWare worked on it as well. I don't know how much they did or didn't do. And it was not as well received due to a bunch of technical issues that continue to today. I fired the game up and had immediate technical issues.
Nice.
And they're very easily modded out by now because it's been years, but it's frustrating. Yeah, I will say, just ease of gameplay wise, it is an immediately more modern, more playable game and better looking game compared to the original Neverwinter Nights.
I mean, to be fair, I had to mod Skyrim to get it to run, so...
That's... Oh, God damn it. I didn't know you could run Skyrim unmodded. Is that even a...
Right.
Is that even a thing they do?
You can't, because it starts up and then crashes every, 30 seconds. awful.
The Aurora tool set has been used for schools and for various tasks across several fields of studies. I saw one MIT professor made a whole game to reenact the Civil War to help as a teaching tool for their students. Like the Aurora tool set possibly has a more illustrious legacy than Neverwinter Nights as a video game.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us around to final thoughts. I do think that Neverwinter Nights, like so many Western RPGs, is kind of one of those games where you have to find the fun. Mm-hmm. And sometimes finding that fun is harder because of obtuse or tedious or unfriendly design. But when you do find the fun, and if you are willing to put up with repeated failures, then when you get there, it's a really great, very often kind of modern feeling D&D experience. If you don't mind cheating a bit and you want something that's pretty darn close to tabletop D&D compared to earlier D&D games, I think there is enjoyment to be had here. That said, I do think that more modern D&D games like the Larian games or maybe the Pathfinder games might be a little more your speed. Unless you're just like, no, I really just want 3rd edition D&D, then I think there's fun to be had here, but I think you kind of need to know what you're going into. Period.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you're not wrong, and I think personally, I will never touch this game again. Well, I mean, unless we're playing it on Wednesday, then
I don't. Yeah, I need to think about that. It's funny. What it has spurred me to do is want to play more modern D&D games with our D&D group.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like, I'd be down for some Divinity Original Sin. If you guys want to buy into Baldur's Gate 3, I'd be into that real hard. But
yep, is it still $60?
It probably.
Good.
Yeah, for an early release game where you don't even have all the D&D classes, like I get
at least give me like $10 off.
Right.
Like, give me something, right?
But I mean, I guess it's a fun experience in a group, with the right group of people. Like I said, because of the asymmetric nature of the pausing, and anybody can pause and unpause and stuff like that. You have to have understanding people who know how to communicate well with each other.
Right. You really have to work as a group big time.
Yeah. I think personally the single player felt a bit lacking. I mean, I tried a bunch of different characters, different classes, different modules, and it just never clicked. And I tried to give each one at least a couple of hours, so that it wasn't just like skipping around and saying, oh, this is dumb, next,
It breaks my heart that like your first big episode you've been on since NFL Blitz, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to touch this game ever again. Hey, guy, you want to do Bubsy 3D with me next week? It'll be a good time.
No, I prefer Spyro. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I can see why people like it and how you could pour hours into it. It's just not particularly for me.
It's definitely not for me either.
I think I reached a point where I respect what it is. I respect what it did. I've had my fun with it, but I think there are just better, more mature, more enjoyable D&D video games to be playing right now. And I think they're in kind of a renaissance right now. So
I am upset that I have given them so much money for the game over the years because I've bought it at least 3 times.
And now Guy will never play it with you because he's never going to touch it again. So
that's all right. I'm probably never going to touch it again either.
Anyway, that's Neverwinter Nights. I just think if I had to sum up my feelings of it in a word, it's inconsistent. It has been an inconsistent experience, and I don't think I've flip-flopped on a game from when I started playing it to when we did an episode on it like this much in a long time. Because when I started it, I was like, this is fucking great. And then as I started getting to like higher levels and later stuff, the tedium kicked in, and I really flip-flopped on this one.
It's happened before.
But
it's been a little bit.
Not a lot. Yeah, it's been a little while. I can't even think what the last one was that I really started it and I was excited, and then by the time we did the episode, I was like, I don't know, man. But yeah. Anyway, What I've not flip-flopped on is recommending our Patreon to you, which you can access at patreon.com/retrowarriors, and you can get uncut versions of this show a couple weeks early. You can get our spin-off show, Talking Wizards. You can hear me tell a story about locking my wife out of the house in a rainstorm while she's on the phone with tech support.
That's a great
good
story.
time. Yeah. And we would love to have you. We would also love it if you would rate and review us on your podcast aggregator of choice. It does legitimately make a difference. And, like tell a friend about the show. Be like, hey, listen to this good show. These guys that thought Neverwinter was just kind of okay. Yeah.
Dude, I tell people about this show all the time, and I have the hardest time describing my affiliation with the show, right?
You just tell me you're a producer.
Right. I'm like, yeah, you should listen to this podcast that I do. Well, no, I don't do it really. That I'm a part of. Well, I'm kind of a part of it, I guess.
You contribute.
Yeah.
Right.
You contribute quite a bit, honestly.
You produce it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, there you go.
I feel weird being like, you should listen to this podcast I produce.
Yeah. And then we didn't talk about before the show. Guy, are you going to have your segment at the end of this episode?
Yes, sir. I've got notes.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
It doesn't just say Guy episode question mark anymore.
So stay tuned after the ending theme. I would say Guy's going to be here, but he's going to still be here.
Yeah.
So he'll be here then.
Well, I'm here now, but I'll be here then too.
Anyway, Guy, you can help us read names.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This will be good.
It's going to be so fun. You can go after Saturn. We'll just go round robin.
Yeah.
This episode was brought to you by the following patrons who we want to thank specifically, starting with Earthy.
And Andrew Scalf.
Slick Rick.
Ridley Scott's mom.
El Malaguero.
Jerry Vaz.
STG the Mr. Guy.
The New Craft.
Burger Champ.
Oh, sorry. I'm so used to going after Saturn. No, say it again.
Burger Champ.
Yeah. And Harry Pry are all the people we want to thank for making this episode possible. Guy, we want to thank you for taking time out of your week to play many hours of a game that you ultimately just kind of were lukewarm on, and then coming to do an episode on it with us so I could talk about D&D systems for 45 minutes.
I knew it was coming too. I
listened
I
quiet.
made sure to have a magazine on hand just in case you started talking about D&D.
Yeah, I assume you went and had
actually, the encumbrance rules were changed in 3.5, and then Saturn
he's talking again.
leaves the call.
I mean, it was a good representation of 3rd edition, but I don't know about 3rd and a half edition.
I wish I had recorded the Discord disconnect noise just so I could randomly play it throughout the episode.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned after the ending theme. Guy's gonna be on for his monthly producer segment. And so stay tuned for that. Anyway, thanks for listening, and as always, let us cling together. Guy.
Hi.
It's welcome to the after party. It's the after party now. It's
Are you
been
welcoming
seconds.
me?
Yes. Welcome to your segment. Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome to the show you've been on this whole time.
I know.
Yes. Well, maybe some people are just going to skip to the end just to hear your segment.
true,
So.
Oh, that would be really nice of some people.
There could be people who are just like, I'm not a fan of Neverwinter, but I do want to hear what Guy has to say.
I thought you were going to say they weren't a fan of you and me, and they only like guys, so they just
that also
listen to
is
every
true.
4th episode.
Well, those are the people with taste.
Yes,
Right. They subscribe to our highest Patreon tier to get all of my shows.
Yeah, Guy exclusive tier. It's the I hate Justin and Saturn tier where you only get Guy content, and we're not.
I'm gonna pay you.
Guy, what do you have for us this month?
Well, I was going to come on here and yell at you for talking wizards, but you made me feel bad about it by saying Andrew's not here.
Well, you told me you had a problem with things I said on Talking Wizards, and then in After Hours, I was like, you always yell at me for things that happen on Talking Wizards, but I'm only half of the show. Like 50% of the show that you want to yell at isn't even present.
In fairness, he already does his own show with Andrew all the time. So
True. Do you yell at Andrew on Cinema Rogues about things?
No, we talk about movies.
Oh, see, that's not even fair.
He has no complaints with Andrew's part.
We do talk about you guys sometimes, like, we think this is a movie that Justin or Saturn would enjoy, kind of thing. But,
Ooh.
okay. So instead of yelling at you, I'm just going to mention in your SNL talk on Talking Wizards,
Yes.
the things that I found sort of objectionable and would like to mention.
I like how I feel like you're trying so hard not to yell at me now.
Yeah.
Right. And you, to be fair, you said that you don't like SNL. You've seen episodes here and there, and you've just come to the conclusion that it's not a show you like.
Correct. I mean, every now and then, like, there's a really great skit, obviously. It's a skit show, so sometimes there will be one that I'm like, oh, yeah, I like that skit, or I like this one. But yeah, I have not been a major SNL watcher, really, ever.
But you and Andrew were trying to sort of narrow down, like, what era of SNL that you liked. And you said something to the effect of, there's, like, the Mike Myers and Chevy Chase era. See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, I guess they would be pretty separate, huh?
Right.
Okay, so Chevy Chase was on one season in 1975.
It was like the first or second season, wasn't it?
The first season. And then he left the show.
Mike Myers was early 90s, right?
Right, yeah. I think he joined the show in, 88, 89, maybe?
Yeah, something like
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, it was a good 15-year gap.
Yeah, you broke it down.
That 15-year era is the era I like. So
you broke it down into like 4 eras. There was the Chevy Chase, Chevy Chase, Jim Belushi, Mike Myers, David Spade era, or Chris Farley era.
Yeah.
So the first 25 years of the show.
Yeah. So the beginning through the 90s.
Right. And then you had like the Will Ferrell era.
Yeah, early 2000s-ish kind of stuff.
And then the John Mulaney era, and then the current era. Like, John Mulaney was like this decade, and somehow he gets his own era.
Are you trying to say John Mulaney?
Mulaney, whatever.
Okay.
That guy. Spider Pig.
Yeah.
Andrew would have brought John Mulaney up, because I don't...
Yeah, and that brings me around to my second point. You guys
I know his stand-up, but I don't know.
You guys were talking about writers, right?
Yes.
And you were talking about Conan, or Andrew was talking about liking the Conan O'Brien era, which the Conan O'Brien era was like 1988 to 1991.
Yeah, yeah.
That's nowhere near any of the the cast members that you like.
Right.
So that was the thing. But you were trying to think of writers of the show, and you came up with like John Mulaney and Conan O'Brien. And
why didn't I come up with John Mulaney?
Sure.
Andrew probably came up with John
One of
Mulaney.
you did.
I didn't know John Mulaney wrote for SNL. I mean, good for him. I like
a lot
his
of the cast members have written for SNL over the years.
Yeah. I would assume a lot of them would
honestly.
like write their own bits and stuff.
Yeah, and you were talking about how like it was probably funny when Will Ferrell was writing stuff, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that you didn't mention that I did want to clarify and make a point of clarifying is that the head writer in that sort of Will Ferrell, Amy Poehler era was Tina Fey.
Mike
Yeah, it was Tina
Myers.
Fey.
It was Tina Fey.
Right.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you guys
She wrote for years.
completely glossed over any women writers on SNL.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that's
I didn't mean to. I
know
will
you didn't
say
mean to.
that I've never watched an episode of SNL from any of that time frame when Tina Fey and Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler and any of them were working on the show at all. I've never seen one full episode a single time ever.
That's mostly when I stopped watching as well.
I saw the skits because everyone saw them. But I never, I don't believe I ever actually sat down on a Saturday night and watched an episode of SNL when they were working on it. So
I think
that would be my excuse. Is I've never seen
Well,
that
I think
era of the
SNL
show.
like suffer. I don't know if "suffer" is the right word, but isn't the effect of SNL is basically like survivor bias, right?
Yeah.
Where like you remember the good things and like you look at it today and you're like, oh no, it's all crap. But in like 10 years, there will be some standout skits from the current crop of people, right?
Yeah,
because we only remember the good ones,
Right. Yeah.
So of course, like the good ones get better, and then the bad ones get forgotten.
Right.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
was talking to my boss about it, about how we were both regular watchers of the show from like the late 80s through at least 96, 97. We watched it consistently every week. And me and him were talking about it, and we were like, yeah, it was so much better back then. And then he says, yeah, except for like still 60% was bad. And I was like, what do you mean? It was great back then. And he was like, no, you just remember what was great. Yeah. And we were talking about like, the show was an hour and a half every week. Mm-hmm. It was either an hour or an hour and a half every week. And he was like, yeah, like 30, 40 minutes of it was usually pretty good. The rest wasn't. And then there was a lot of commercials. And so like I was trying to find any kind of clips of full episodes, and it's all just best of. And then I found like some or some websites that like listed all the sketches that were in an episode. And I was like, oh God, I remember that. Oh God. Oh no. Oh, this is bad. So yeah.
They were pretty bad.
Yeah. I don't know that. I think I've watched one episode of SNL in my entire life that was actually like, it's Saturday night, let's watch Saturday Night Live. Every other episode I saw was in the 90s. I'd be watching Mad TV, and then Comedy Central, or I guess late 90s, early 2000s, Comedy Central would turn on old SNL reruns after Mad TV, and I'd go, this isn't Mad TV. Gross. And I'd watch like an episode and go, yeah, I'm done. And move on.
I hated Mad TV so much.
I loved Mad TV.
I hated it.
It was just that. I mean, so it was early 2000s, so I was like 10 to 13-year-old range.
Yeah.
And it was just that perfect level of really stupid humor that spoke to my 12-year-old self. You know when you're 12 and you're just like
I think that's probably about the age that I was when that show premiered, and I couldn't stand it. Oh, I could not stand Mad TV.
Look, I get it, you're fancy and cultured or whatever, but
no, not
I
that.
like SNL. I like it.
Yeah, that highbrow SNL humor.
Was it SNL that had that one skit where that guy had a day woo and he was always going on about his day woo?
I have no idea.
I have
Nobody remembers that?
No.
Yeah.
He was like, my day woo. And he had this. All right, never mind. What else you got, guys?
Well, okay. So your 51st Dates bit was really funny.
I love that bit.
I don't want to come on here and crush your dreams. Yes. I was going to yell at you a little bit, but the only thing that I have to add to your 51st Dates spiel was that you didn't talk about what would it be like being Drew Barrymore's character on the day she gave birth.
Oh, no.
Right.
So for people that didn't listen to Talking Wizards, you should. But we basically were talking about 51st Dates as it would have actually happened in real life, because what a horrible life to have to live. I couldn't even imagine. Not only the day you gave birth, but for 9 months waking up and be like, oh my God, what's happened to my body? Because when women get pregnant, like, it's not like giving birth. Like, giving birth is the definitely the worst part, but a lot of shit happens on the way there that is also really fucking shitty. Yeah. And as a man, I didn't know about any of it, and then my wife got pregnant, and I was like, all right, you're just gonna, grow a baby, and then you have that one really bad day. Oh no, it's a lot worse than that. There are many bad days along the very bad days.
You don't say.
Like, I couldn't imagine waking up one day and being like, why am I 80 pounds heavier and I just want to fucking murder everyone? Like, I couldn't imagine waking up.
Right. And which also brings up, like, as you're more pregnant, your bladder gets like squished, right?
Yeah.
So you have
all your organs get smooshed.
Right. But your bladder specifically would make you wake up more.
Yeah.
So I assume there were some nights where she woke up in the middle of the night, like next to Adam Sandler, like, what the
why am I huge? What is going on? I'm peeing.
Just starts like slapping him.
Yeah.
Has no idea what's going on.
We also didn't even discuss the whole like aspect of, all right, she goes to sleep every night and wakes up with memory loss. What if she stays up? Or what if she only takes a nap for an hour? Does she just forget some years? Or is it just like the second you fall asleep, it's all just like poof, gone? Like, is it like a Gremlins style midnight changeover event? Or is it like a gradual forgetting of everything?
That's good.
Like, could you sleep half an hour less every night and still remember your kids' names? Like, I don't know.
Well, hopefully she remembers their face. I don't know.
There you go.
Because, I mean, they made a point in that movie that she was like painting his face after she didn't see him for like a month or whatever.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
So there was some retention. Although the fact that they lived on a fucking houseboat and she had to watch a videotape every morning to know what the hell is going on, and that was the happy ending of the movie.
Well, yeah, her dad and brother were there too.
Implies that the retention was not. They make it seem in the movie with the painting and the stuff that it's like, oh, maybe she'll get her memory back, and it's like, no, she never does. And you're like, oh, the bad ending. I see.
But yeah, no, I like that bit. I think it was as funny as advertised, and I'm glad you told me to fucking stick with it.
A+ bit. Did it.
You drove me insane on the last episode I listened to because you kept saying capsule.
Yeah, capsule.
Oh, my God.
What? Capsule.
For like 10 minutes straight, him and Andrew were just capsule.
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 I don't understand. Capsule. What do you say?
It's a capsule.
Capsule.
Capsule?
Yeah.
That's weird.
You're weird. Do you also say coupon?
I say coupon, yeah.
Gross.
But mostly just... All right. Mostly just because I like saying it that way. It's fun.
I just hope that capsule isn't something that slips into your lexicon, please.
Can it slip in if it has already like existed as a portion of my vocabulary bedrock? You know, is that? I don't know. Sometimes I just get a wild hair and I'll pronounce a word differently for a month. I don't know. You know, you just try it out. You don't know.
Yeah, no,
it's not an incorrect pronunciation.
I'm actually looking up the pronunciation, and it looks like that's the UK pronunciation.
There you go. Capsule, aluminium.
I mean,
urinal, yogurt. Leave me alone.
Urinal.
I mean, it's like the way that you say iteration.
Yeah.
It seemed like that's one that started out as a joke, but then just kind of stayed.
Maybe. Honest, at this point, I don't even know.
What's funny is I have noticed that you will say iteration, but then you'll still say iterative.
Yeah. Is this different? I wouldn't say. I don't know. I have no idea. Shut up, you capsules.
I do the same thing, though. I will inadvertently mispronounce a word one time, and then it just becomes the correct pronunciation in my mind forever.
Guy, I want you to sit there and I want you to honestly, you fucking tell me that saying capsule isn't more fun. I dare you to tell me that.
It's more
fun.
Syllables.
It's more fun. More syllables is more fun.
Oh, for context, Saturn and listeners, they were talking about how we don't have future food yet that like comes in capsules.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would.
Well, in the future, everyone's going to say capsule because it's more futuristic sounding.
And then they were talking about seeing how that they know that in the future, if we had dehydrated pizza, there would be people that would eat like 50 and then explode.
Yeah, I believe that. I do believe that would happen.
What else do you got? Because we're almost at 2 hours on this episode.
All right, my last thing is last pre-show, you were talking to Saturn about the shit pants thing.
Yeah, I shit my pants. That Target advertising.
And you said, I thought we had this conversation already. That was a conversation you had with Andrew on Talking Wizards. Because you went into, I shit my pants from that into the easy button at Staples.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Gross.
You were talking about weird advertising things in that time.
I guess
frame.
I need to work more on my pre-recorded banter. Some of it's repeating. I'll have to take a different capsule in the morning to help with my memory.
To help you not ship your pants. That's all I got.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for producing the show. We're going to stop recording now because it's been a long time.
Hey, also, thank you for helping carry the show, because I knew that as soon as Justin started talking about D&D stuff, I would not know what to say. So I appreciate you being here to help out with that.
I was happy to do it. It was super fun.
Nice.
Excellent. Okay, bye.
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 Bye.